Fresh back from the Pacific Island Forum is the Foreign Minister, Winston Peters, and much is happening in politics here at home. I would like to, Mr. Peters, I'd first ask you if you'd like to acknowledge or say any words in response to the passing of King Tuheitia.
Look, I was acting Prime Minister because Christopher Luxon was abroad and put out a press statement on behalf of the government, and I made it very, very clear that he had a difficult inheritance. He didn't expect to be the king. He had tried to and did grow into it, and for 18 years he's been the king, and we respect him for that, being the king of Tainui, or the Māori king, and some other iwi are associated as well. And in that respect, it is a passing of a significant time. And those of us who remember his mother, what an esteemed person she was, knew very deep shoes to fill.
Do you think the Kingi-Tanga movement is still relevant in this day and age? Do you think it has a role to play?
Well, it's still relevant because it's the leadership of the Kingi-Tanga movement, or the King movement, so to speak. It's relevant in the sense that people respect them for that. But you've got other, huge areas around the country, like Ngāpuhi, the biggest tribe there is, the biggest iwi. Then you've got in the deep south, you've got Ngāi Tahu, you've got Ngāti Porou in east, and Ngāti Kānguna, and a whole lot of others who don't. So it's just a matter of having respect for any leading group, and as you would in any society. Pay the respects that people are due. Don't over-romanticise things, as some are trying to do, making all sorts of statements which simply are not true. Just tell the truth and give people the proper respect, and have time at this most difficult time for the family.
Let's move on to the forum then. Firstly, isn't it excellent that no Air Force planes broke down getting to and from Tonga? That's a pretty rare occurrence.
Not just that. I was up in Micronesia, and you had three countries there, Palau, Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands, who were having it really difficult to get to the forum to Tonga. Some of them had to go all the way to the States and then fly down to New Zealand and then fly off to Tonga that way. It was so difficult for them to get there. And in the end, we said, look, we've got a plane, it's spare for this time. We'll send it up here and pick you up and take you all along in one go and take you back. And they were enormously delighted. Now, it's not an expensive thing. It's just a matter of ensuring that the forum can operate with all its numbers there, all 18, and not just having 2 or 3 critical countries saying, well, we can't send anybody, we'll just send along someone way below the status they should have. So it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
And you're right. They didn't break down. And as I told Chris Luxon, better to be born lucky than born rich.
Let's look at the forum itself now, and there are 2 issues I want to concentrate on. The first is, well, this debate, the geopolitical debate about where the Pacific sits and where New Zealand should sit in relation to AUKUS, and concerns or otherwise about the influence of the Chinese. I've seen reports that the forum was influenced not to take as strong a position on the encroachment of Chinese influence in the region as it might have. And I wonder what feedback you got to what is perceived to be an increasingly small C conservative approach to foreign affairs and alignments by New Zealand while you're up there.
Well, first of all, you'll have to ask each of the forum countries about that respect to the quotes encroachment of China or otherwise. There's no doubt that China is pushing very hard in large parts of the Pacific, as it has done worldwide. When it began with OBOR, one belt, one road, that didn't go for well for 3 years, so they changed to belts and roads. But they didn't stop their push internationally in that respect. And I recall it with great clarity. I recall saying to my then counterpart, and still counterpart now, who's come back after being restored to Foreign Affairs Minister, Wongi, could you give me, please, in writing what your belts and roads program is about? And I never, ever had a reply, not a criticism. But these are the realities of real politics, so to speak. Now, when it comes to the Pacific, a lot of China's money comes, we say, with strings. For example, the loans have to be repaid. When Australia, New Zealand and others put money into the Pacific, we put it in because it's a sound policy to develop the society and invest in the society. we have the strategy that it's better to help them there and their economy to be successful than be taking immigrants, which we can't take the number of that they would like us to take, and be unable to help them in our society. So these are fundamental differences here. So was it tipping around geostrategic areas? Well, some might tiptoe around it, and some of us are straight up and frank, because in the end, we're signed up to a number of arrangements, us 18 countries, to work together, for our security to be together, to actually think about things together and try and think as one. And it requires us all to understand that, not just go off and say what we think without thinking, hang on, what do our friends in this arrangement called the Pacific Islands Forum actually think?
And what do they think? Are they supportive of this perceived change in New Zealand's foreign policy stance?
Well, of course, they're not carried away. They're not foolish. They know that with respect to AUKUS, I'm confident of that because I made a number of speeches about AUKUS. I've told them all that in September of 2021, Jacinda Ardern's the Prime Minister, and she receives his approach on AUKUS Pillar 2. She sets out and gets a report on it, and she gets that report in October of 2021. That's 4 years ago. And they kept on doing the work and month after month, all the way to election 2023. I inherited that and carry on the same job. Nothing changed at all about and we haven't even been invited yet, but to look into what it might mean for us without yet being invited. And all of a sudden, out of left field, you got people like Don Brash, Ellen Clark, shouting, oh, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is so-and-so. And I said to them, excuse me, you're not going to fool us. For those months and months and months after September of 2021, we never heard from you a mutter or a murmur, a syllable or a sound opposing AUKUS Pillar 2 and looking into it. As Andrew Little said, very honestly, a month ago, it was the honest and sound thing to do, to find out what it meant for us. And so I've said to them, just go away, don't try and tell us what it's not, because it's not, and we haven't yet, as I said, even being invited. But it shows you what happens when media thinks, oh, here's a massive controversy here. Let's go with this and run it as we go.
Look, the other thing that there was supposedly some controversy over was climate change. I would simply note, I can remember in 1991 on a very old Air Force plane going to the Maldives and being told they would be underwater by the year 2010, and they're not. I think you indicated, Mr. Peters, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are not, if you like, a born-again climate activist, and that you were sceptical, not cynical, not a climate change denier, but just saying that we've got to, have a measured approach.
Well, I'm not going to stand by. I wasn't going to stand by while these people think they can panic us into their unlearned, unscientific stupidity. What proportion of emissions is mankind made?